Listen up, because what I'm about to tell you is gonna mess with your head. You think you're free? You think that paycheck hitting your account every 2 weeks means you got options? Man, you're tripping. See, there's this thing nobody talks about, this invisible chain wrapped around your neck so tight you can't even feel it anymore. It's not your credit cards maxing out, it's not your student loans piling up, nah, it's way more twisted than that. It's the stuff you already bought. The couch sitting in your living room right now, the car parked outside, that phone in your pocket, bro, they own you. Not the bank, not the repo man, you own them, and that's the trap. Every single thing you already paid for is draining you dry, and you don't even see it happening. I watched a dude lose everything, his girl, his mind, his whole future, all because he couldn't escape what he already had. This isn't about going broke, it's about being broke inside while your stuff sits there, staring at you, reminding you that you're stuck. Free but drained. That's the game. And I'm about to show you exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes. Real quick, before we go deeper into this darkness, hit that subscribe button and smash the like. What? Because once you understand what I'm about to reveal, you're gonna want to come back and learn how to break free from every other trap the system's got waiting for you. This channel is your escape route from the matrix of financial slavery, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. This hidden debt trap has millions of people by the throat, and if you stick with me, you'll be one of the few who actually sees it coming. Now let's dive in. His name was Marcus, and 3 years ago he had it all figured out, or so he thought. 28 years old, good job in tech, decent apartment in Oakland, girlfriend he was crazy about, the whole California dream thing, you know? Marcus wasn't rich, but he wasn't struggling either. He was what you'd call comfortable, that dangerous middle ground where you think you're winning but you're actually standing on quicksand. And the thing about quicksand? You don't notice you're sinking until you're already chest deep. It started innocent enough, the way these things always do. Marcus bought a car, nothing fancy, just a reliable Honda to get him to work and back. Paid it off in 3 years, felt like a boss, like he'd accomplished something real. Then he upgraded his apartment, got some nice furniture, real adult stuff, you feel me? A leather couch, a proper bed frame, a big TV for game nights. He wasn't being reckless, wasn't buying designer clothes or blowing money at clubs every weekend. He was just living, building a life, doing what everyone told him he was supposed to do. But here's where it gets weird, and this is the part nobody warns you about. Every single thing Marcus bought, every purchase he made and paid off completely, it didn't set him free. It locked him in tighter. See that car? It needed insurance every month, registration every year, maintenance, gas, parking. That apartment? Higher rent meant he couldn't just bounce if things got tight. That furniture? It meant he needed that specific size apartment to fit it all. That TV? Streaming subscriptions, internet bills, the electricity to power it. Each thing he owned created these tiny little threads, expenses that weren't the purchase price but the cost of having the thing, and those threads wrapped around him like a spider's web, so thin you barely notice them until you try to move and realize you're completely stuck. Marcus didn't see it at first. Nobody does. He just kept grinding, kept working, kept paying his bills like clockwork. His girlfriend Sarah started talking about moving in together, maybe getting a bigger place, and Marcus was down for it. They found this sick 2-bedroom in Berkeley, more expensive but totally worth it, they thought. They moved in together, combined their stuff, bought more things to fill the space, a dining table, kitchen gadgets, all that domestic life energy. They were building something together, investing in their future, or at least that's what it felt like. Then the tech industry started shifting. Marcus's company did layoffs, not massive ones, just enough to make everyone nervous. You know that vibe where you're waiting for the other shoe to drop? His department survived, but they froze raises, cut bonuses, started talking about efficiency and doing more with less. Marcus's income stayed flat while everything around him kept getting more expensive. Rent went up, insurance went up, food costs went up, and suddenly that comfortable life started feeling tight. He wasn't broke, he still had his job, still paid his bills, but there was no breathing room anymore, no cushion, just this constant pressure squeezing from all sides. Sarah wanted to talk about next steps, about maybe getting engaged, buying a place eventually, and Marcus felt this panic rising in his chest that he couldn't explain. He loved her, that wasn't the issue. The issue was he could barely afford the life they already had, and she was talking about expanding it, making it bigger, adding more weight to a structure that was already creaking. But he couldn't say that, couldn't admit that he felt trapped, because trapped by what? By the stuff they owned? By the apartment they chose? By the life they built together? It sounded insane even in his own head. So he did what a lot of people do, he tried to optimize his way out of it. Cut subscriptions, meal prepped, stopped going out as much, all the typical money-saving moves you read about online. And it helped a little, gave him maybe an extra $100 a month, but it didn't solve the real problem. The real problem was that his entire life was structured around maintaining what he already had, and that maintenance cost consumed almost everything he made. He wasn't living, he was just servicing his existence, feeding the beast of his own past decisions. The stress started eating at him in ways he didn't recognize at first. He'd wake up at 3 in the morning doing math in his head, calculating if he could afford to fix his car if something broke, wondering what would happen if he lost his job, playing out disaster scenarios on repeat. During the day he'd be at work trying to focus, but his mind would drift to the bills sitting in his email inbox, the balance in his checking account, the credit card he swore he wouldn't use but had started leaning on for groceries when money got tight at the end of the month. He wasn't in debt, not really, not the crushing kind where collectors are calling, but he was in this gray zone where one bad month would tip everything over the edge. Sarah noticed something was off. Marcus was distant, irritable, checked out. They'd be watching TV on that couch he was so proud of buying, and he'd be somewhere else entirely, lost in calculations and contingency plans. She'd ask what was wrong and he'd say nothing, because how do you explain that you feel suffocated by the life you're supposed to want? How do you tell someone you love that you're terrified of the future you're building together? You don't, so you swallow it and it rots inside you, turns into resentment and anxiety and this constant low-grade dread that colors everything. Then Marcus made the mistake a lot of people make when they're feeling trapped. He thought buying something new would fix it. Maybe if he had better work equipment he'd be more productive, get that promotion, earn more money, solve the problem at its root. So he financed a laptop, nice one, convinced himself it was an investment. And maybe it would have been if his brain wasn't already maxed out on stress, if he could actually focus on work instead of drowning in financial anxiety. But the new laptop just added another monthly payment, another thread in the web, another thing he had to maintain and pay for and worry about losing. The relationship with Sarah started falling apart in slow motion, the way relationships do when the real problem isn't something you can point to and fix, when it's this amorphous cloud of stress and fear that's always hanging over everything. They fought about small stuff, stupid stuff, dishes and plans and whose turn it was to do whatever, but really they were fighting about the fact that they were both exhausted and scared and didn't know how to talk about it. Marcus felt like a failure for not being able to provide the stability Sarah deserved, and Sarah felt shut out because Marcus wouldn't let her in, wouldn't tell her what was really going on in his head. One night they had a massive blow-up over something completely trivial. Marcus forgot to pay the internet bill and it got shut off and Sarah lost it, not about the internet but about everything, about how checked out he was, how she felt like she was living with a ghost, how she didn't know who he was anymore. And Marcus just sat there on that leather couch, the one he'd been so stoked about 3 years earlier, and realized he couldn't remember the last time he felt genuinely happy, genuinely free, genuinely like himself instead of this anxious shell of a person just trying to keep all the plates spinning. Sarah moved out 2 weeks later, and Marcus was left alone in that 2-bedroom apartment that suddenly felt massive and empty and suffocating all at once. He couldn't afford it by himself, not really, but breaking the lease would cost him thousands he didn't have, and besides, where would he go? All his furniture was sized for this place, his whole life was configured around this specific setup, and the thought of dismantling it all, moving everything, starting over, it was too much, so he just stayed, paying rent that ate up most of his paycheck, living in half an apartment like a ghost haunting his own life. That's when Marcus started really seeing it, the thing I'm trying to show you, the invisible prison he built around himself, one purchase at a time. He'd walk through his apartment at night, unable to sleep, looking at all his stuff, and instead of seeing the things he owned, he started seeing the ways they owned him. That couch wasn't just a couch, it was $1,200 he could never get back, sitting there taking up space, too big to fit in a smaller apartment if he wanted to downsize, not valuable enough to sell for anything meaningful. That TV wasn't entertainment, it was a monthly drain on his account for services he barely used but couldn't cancel, because what's the point of having a TV if you're not gonna watch anything on it? His car sat in the parking garage, depreciating every single day, costing him money even when he wasn't driving it, but he couldn't get rid of it because how would he get to work? How would he live his life without a car in the Bay Area? Every single thing he'd bought during his comfortable years had transformed from an asset into an anchor, and the weight of all those anchors was pulling him under. He started doing research online, late-night rabbit holes, trying to understand what was happening to him, and that's when he found the term, past purchase prisoner, this concept that most people's financial stress doesn't come from their current spending or even their debt, it comes from the ongoing cost of maintaining things they already bought and paid for. The hidden expenses that never stop, the infrastructure of your life that demands constant feeding, the trap of sunk costs and commitments you made when things were different. Marcus discovered he wasn't alone, not even close. There were forums full of people describing the same suffocation, the same realization that they'd built a life they could barely afford to maintain, let alone enjoy. Middle-class people who looked fine on paper but were one emergency away from collapse, who spent all their energy just keeping their current situation from falling apart, who couldn't take risks or make changes because they were locked into their existing structure. They called it lifestyle imprisonment, the golden handcuffs, the comfort trap, all these different names for the same nightmare. You work hard, you buy the things you're supposed to buy, you build the life you're supposed to build, and then you wake up one day and realize the life you built is eating you alive. But here's where it gets really dark, where Marcus's story takes a turn that's gonna make you uncomfortable. He started calculating, really calculating what it would take to actually be free. Not rich, not comfortable, just free from the constant pressure. He made spreadsheets, tracked every expense, categorized everything into essential versus maintenance versus the cost of past decisions. And what he found broke something in him. Even if he cut everything possible, lived like a monk, stopped buying anything new, he'd still need about 70% of his income just to maintain his current baseline, his car, his apartment, his insurance, his utilities, his phone, his internet, all the things that weren't luxuries but had become necessities because of choices he'd made years ago when he had more optimism and less understanding of how the trap worked. That meant only 30% of his life, his time, his energy, his work was actually his. 70% was already spoken for, already committed, already consumed by the past. He was living his life in debt to his former self, to the person he used to be who made decisions without understanding the long-term cost. And the really messed up part? That former version of himself had been trying to do the right thing, trying to build stability, trying to be responsible. It wasn't like Marcus had been reckless or stupid, he'd actually been pretty careful, pretty smart about his choices. But careful and smart within a system that's designed to trap you, that's still trapped, you just don't see the bars until you try to leave. Marcus started noticing this pattern everywhere once he knew to look for it. His co-workers who couldn't quit jobs they hated because they had mortgages, his friends who stayed in toxic relationships because they'd merged their lives so completely that separation would be financially catastrophic. People who were deeply unhappy but couldn't make changes because the cost of undoing their past decisions was higher than the cost of staying miserable. Everyone was stuck, everyone was maintaining, everyone was serving the life they'd built instead of actually living it. And the system, man, the system is genius at keeping you locked in. Every financial advice article tells you to invest in quality, to buy things that last, to build equity, to create stability. But they never tell you that stability is just another word for immobility, that equity is just another chain, that quality products last longer, which means you're committed to them longer. They never tell you that every purchase is a vote for a specific future, and once enough of those votes are cast, you don't get to change your mind without paying a massive penalty. You're locked into the path you chose, even if it's destroying you, even if you've outgrown it, even if it was based on circumstances that no longer exist. Marcus had a breaking point, a moment where he seriously considered just walking away from everything. Not just quitting his job but actually abandoning his whole life, his apartment, his car, his stuff, all of it, just ghosting his entire existence and starting over with nothing somewhere else. He fantasized about it constantly, moving to a cheap city, living in a tiny room, working some basic job that didn't matter, having no possessions, no commitments, no maintenance costs, being actually free even if it meant being poor. And the only thing that stopped him, the only reason he didn't do it, was the realization that he'd just build another prison eventually, that this is what humans do, we accumulate, we nest, we create structure, and that structure always ends up trapping us. But Marcus did start making small moves, tiny rebellions against his own past. He stopped maintaining things that didn't absolutely need to be maintained. His car got dirtier, his apartment got messier. He wore clothes until they actually fell apart instead of replacing them when they got worn. He canceled every subscription he could justify canceling, downgraded every service that could be downgraded. He stopped pretending his stuff was valuable and started treating it like what it really was, the residue of old decisions that he was stuck with until they naturally degraded enough to justify getting rid of them. His coworkers thought he was depressed, and maybe he was, but it was more like he'd had an awakening, one of those moments where you see through the illusion and can't unsee it. He'd spent his whole adult life playing this game of accumulation and improvement, thinking that if he just got the right stuff, the right apartment, the right car, the right life setup, he'd feel secure and happy. But security and happiness kept moving, kept requiring more maintenance, more income, more sacrifice. It was a treadmill that sped up the longer you ran on it, and the only way to not be exhausted was to step off completely, which most people can't do because they've built too much, committed too deeply, locked themselves in too thoroughly. Marcus started talking to his younger co-workers about it, the ones who were just starting out, just getting their first real paychecks, just beginning to buy the things they thought they wanted. He'd try to warn them, try to explain what was waiting for them down the road, but they never really got it, couldn't get it, because you can't understand the trap until you're in it, until you feel the walls closing in and realize they've been closing for years and you just didn't notice. They'd nod politely and then go finance a new couch or lease a nicer car, making the same choices Marcus had made, building their own prisons brick by brick, and he couldn't stop them any more than anyone could have stopped him. The really twisted thing Marcus realized was that this whole cycle, this whole past purchase prisoner phenomenon, it wasn't a bug in the system, it was the feature. The economy depends on people locking themselves into ongoing costs, into maintenance and subscriptions and infrastructure that can't be easily abandoned. Every business model is designed to create stickiness, to make switching costly, to turn customers into prisoners who keep paying because the alternative is too expensive or too complicated or too psychologically exhausting. You're not supposed to be free, you're supposed to be invested, committed, trapped in a web of your own choices that keeps you working, keeps you earning, keeps you consuming just enough to maintain what you already have. Hold up real quick, I need to know something. What are you thinking right now? Like honestly, does this hit different? Drop a comment and tell me, have you felt this? Are you feeling it right now? Do you know someone who's stuck in this exact trap, working their whole life just to maintain what they already have? Share your story in the comments, because I guarantee you're not alone in this, and seeing other people's experiences might be exactly what you need to understand your own situation better. Your comment actually helps me keep bringing real content like this, content that exposes what nobody else wants to talk about. But yo, don't bounce yet, because what I'm about to reveal in the next part is the thing that really changed everything for Marcus, the deeper layer of this trap that most people never even realize exists. And trust me, you need to hear this before you make your next financial decision. Stay with me. So Marcus is living in this half-empty apartment, barely maintaining his stuff, going through the motions at work, and he starts having these conversations with himself that get darker and darker. Not suicidal or anything like that, but existential in a way that cuts deep, you know? He'd sit there at night and ask himself the real question, the one that nobody wants to face. What percentage of my life is actually mine? Like really mine, not spoken for, not committed, not already consumed by past decisions I can't undo without massive cost? And that's when he discovered the deepest layer of this trap, the part that's gonna mess you up if you really think about it. It's not just your money that gets locked in, it's your time, your actual life, your finite existence on this planet. Every purchase you make isn't just a financial commitment, it's a time commitment. That car you bought? You're not just paying for insurance and maintenance, you're committing hours of your life to driving it, parking it, thinking about it, worrying about it. That apartment? You're committing time to cleaning it, organizing it, filling it with stuff that then needs more time to maintain. Every single thing you own is eating your life in small increments that seem insignificant until you add them all up and realize years have passed and you've spent most of that time just maintaining your baseline existence. Marcus started tracking this too, became obsessed with it actually. He calculated how many hours per week he spent on maintenance activities, stuff that wasn't work and wasn't leisure, just the overhead of being alive with his particular setup. Cleaning, organizing, shopping for necessities, dealing with car stuff, managing bills and subscriptions, fixing things that broke, replacing things that wore out, all of it. And it came out to about 20 hours a week, 20 hours that weren't creating anything new, weren't building toward anything, weren't even enjoyable, just pure maintenance of his existing structure. That's a part-time job, a whole extra job he wasn't getting paid for, just keeping his life from falling apart. And then he extrapolated it out over a lifetime and almost lost his mind. If he lived to 80, and he'd been doing this maintenance since he was 25, that was 55 years of 20 hours per week, which is 57,000 hours, which is 6.5 years of his life spent just maintaining stuff. 6.5 years that he could have spent traveling, creating, learning, connecting with people, doing literally anything else, just gone, consumed by the infrastructure of his existence. And that wasn't even counting the time spent working to pay for the stuff, that was additional, that was most of his waking hours from 25 to 65, another huge chunk of life sacrificed to fund the maintenance of his lifestyle. This realization hit Marcus like a freight train because it meant that the life he thought he was building, the comfortable stable future he was working toward, it wasn't actually freedom or security or success, it was just a more elaborate prison, a bigger cage that required more time and energy to maintain. He'd been sold this narrative his whole life that if you work hard, buy the right things, build a stable foundation, you'll eventually reach a point where you can relax and enjoy life. But that point never comes because the foundation you build requires constant maintenance, and the more elaborate your foundation, the more time you spend maintaining it instead of living on it. Marcus started seeing examples of this everywhere, in everyone. His parents, who'd worked their whole lives to pay off a house they were now too old to properly maintain, spending their retirement dealing with repairs and upkeep instead of traveling like they'd always planned. His older co-workers, who'd climbed the ladder and bought bigger houses and nicer cars and now couldn't retire because their baseline expenses were so high they needed their full salaries just to maintain their lifestyle. His friends who had kids and suddenly their entire existence became about maintaining the infrastructure required to raise those kids. The bigger house, the safer car, the better neighborhood, the college savings, all of it consuming every resource they had with no end in sight. And the really dark part, the part that made Marcus question everything, was realizing that this trap is generational. It gets passed down like genetic code. His parents had done it, their parents had done it, everyone he knew was doing it, and they were all teaching their kids to do the same thing, to work hard, to buy quality stuff, to build stability, to create that same elaborate prison and call it success. The trap perpetuates itself because the people stuck in it can't admit they're stuck, can't face that their whole life strategy was fundamentally flawed, so they double down and teach the next generation to make the same mistakes, and the cycle continues forever. Marcus had this moment of clarity where he understood that almost everyone he knew was living a life they couldn't afford, not financially necessarily but temporally. They didn't have enough time to actually live the life they'd built, they could only maintain it. They were all running on empty, exhausted, stressed, medicated, coping with substances or shopping or whatever distraction kept them from facing the fundamental truth that they'd built a life that consumed them instead of serving them. And here's the part that's going to make you uncomfortable because it made Marcus uncomfortable. It made him question his entire worldview. The system needs you to be trapped like this. The economy, society, everything we've built requires people to lock themselves into ongoing costs, into maintenance cycles, into structures they can't easily escape. If everyone suddenly realized they could live simpler, own less, need less, maintain less, the whole thing would collapse. Jobs would disappear, industries would crumble, the GDP would tank. Your prison is holding up the entire structure of modern civilization, and you escaping would mean participating in the destruction of the world as we know it. So you're stuck in this impossible position where freeing yourself feels selfish, irresponsible, like you're abandoning your duty to keep the machine running. Your mortgage payment isn't just housing, it's supporting the construction industry, the banking sector, the real estate market. Your car isn't just transportation, it's supporting auto manufacturers, insurance companies, gas stations, mechanics. Every ongoing cost you have is someone else's income, and if you cut it, you're hurting people, hurting the economy, being a bad citizen. The trap has moral weight, social pressure. It's not just financial or temporal, it's wrapped up in your identity as a functioning member of society. Marcus started understanding why people get so defensive when you question the system, why his parents got upset when he suggested that maybe owning a home wasn't actually the dream they thought it was, why his co-workers shut down when he talked about lifestyle simplification. Because admitting the trap exists means admitting they're in it, and admitting they're in it means facing that they've wasted years, maybe decades, building something that's been slowly destroying them. That's too painful, too catastrophic to acknowledge, so they attack the messenger instead, insist that you're wrong, that you're lazy or irresponsible or just don't understand how the real world works. But Marcus did understand how the real world works, he understood it better than ever, and that understanding was destroying him from the inside. He'd lie awake at night doing math that had no good answers. If he wanted to actually be free to have most of his time and money truly his own, he'd need to dismantle everything he'd built over the past decade. He'd need to sell his car and bike everywhere or use public transit, which would work but would also make him a weirdo in car-dependent California. He'd need to move to a tiny studio or even a room rental, which would save money but would also feel like failure, like moving backwards in life. He'd need to get rid of most of his possessions, which should be liberating but actually felt like erasing his own history, destroying evidence of the person he used to be. And even if he did all that, even if he stripped his life down to the absolute minimum, he'd still need to work to survive, still need to participate in the system, still need to maintain some baseline level of infrastructure. There's no escape, not really, not unless you want to go full off-grid hermit in the woods, and even that requires resources and skills and a kind of privilege that most people don't have. You can't opt out, you can only negotiate the terms of your imprisonment, try to make the cage a little bigger or the bars a little thinner. This realization is what broke Marcus in a fundamental way because it meant there was no solution, no way to win, no clever strategy that would set him free. He could make his prison smaller and more manageable, sure, but it would still be a prison. He'd still spend most of his life maintaining his existence instead of truly living. The best he could hope for was awareness, understanding the nature of his cage even while being stuck in it, and that awareness was its own kind of torture because you can't unsee it once you see it, can't go back to the comfortable ignorance of thinking you're free when you're not. Marcus started having these conversations with the younger guys at work, more intense than before, almost desperate, like he needed them to understand so his own suffering wouldn't be meaningless. He'd corner them at lunch and explain the math, show them the spreadsheets, prove that the life path they were on led to a trap. And some of them got it, you could see it in their eyes, that moment of recognition, that flash of fear. But then they'd shake it off, make a joke, change the subject, because what are they supposed to do with that information? Stop living? Stop building? Stop participating in the only system that exists? The really messed up thing Marcus realized was that even he couldn't follow his own advice, couldn't bring himself to actually dismantle everything and start over, because the psychological cost was too high, the social cost was too high, the uncertainty was too terrifying. Better to be trapped in a known cage than free in an unknown wilderness, better to maintain a life that's slowly killing you than face the void of starting from zero with no map, no plan, no guarantee that simplification would actually lead to happiness instead of just different problems. So Marcus stayed stuck, aware of his prison but unable to escape it, which might be the worst position of all, because ignorance at least offers the comfort of not knowing better. He'd achieved this dark enlightenment that showed him exactly how trapped he was, and that knowledge changed nothing except making him more miserable, more resentful, more disconnected from the people around him who were still playing the game like it mattered. So where's Marcus now? Still in the Bay Area, still working the same job, still living in that apartment that's too big for one person. He downsized some stuff, got rid of things that felt too heavy, but he's still trapped, still spending 70% of his life maintaining the 30% he gets to actually live. He's not happy, but he's not miserable either, he's just aware. Awake in a world where most people are sleepwalking through their own imprisonment, and that awareness is both a curse and the only honest thing he has left. The thing about Marcus's story that's gonna haunt you is that it's not unique, it's not special, it's not even particularly dramatic. It's just real. It's the default path for millions of people who do everything right, who follow all the rules, who build the life they're supposed to build, and then wake up one day and realize they built a cage. The past purchase prison is everywhere, it's in your apartment right now, it's in your driveway, it's in every closet and drawer and storage unit, silently consuming your money, your time, your actual life, and most people never even see it. Marcus wanted me to tell you something, wanted me to make sure you understood this before you make your next big purchase, your next life decision, your next commitment. Every single thing you buy, you're not just spending money, you're casting a vote for a specific future, and once enough votes are cast, you're locked in. That future owns you. Your stuff owns you. Your past decisions own you. And the cost isn't just financial, it's temporal, it's spiritual, it's the slow erosion of your freedom in exchange for the illusion of stability and success. He said the worst part isn't being trapped, it's watching other people walk into the same trap and not being able to stop them because they have to learn it themselves, have to feel the walls closing in before they'll believe the walls exist. He said it's like watching people volunteer for prison and call it achievement, watching them work themselves to death maintaining possessions that don't serve them, relationships that drain them, lifestyles they can't afford to keep but can't afford to leave. But here's what Marcus didn't tell you, what I'm gonna reveal in my next video, the part of his story that changes everything you just heard. See, there's a reason Marcus wanted his story told, a reason he opened up about all this darkness, and it's not what you think. What happened to Marcus 6 months ago, the decision he made, the line he crossed, it's gonna completely reframe everything you just learned about the past purchase prison, and honestly, it's gonna make you question whether freedom is even possible or if the cage is all there is. I need you to watch that next video right now, seriously, because if you stop here you're getting half the story, half the truth, and half the truth is more dangerous than no truth at all. Marcus's journey doesn't end where you think it ends, and what he discovered about the nature of the trap, about the way out, about the price of freedom, it's something you need to hear before you make another move in your own life. Click on the next video, it's right there on your screen, the one that says, "What Marcus did next will change how you see everything." Don't wait, don't scroll away, don't tell yourself you'll come back later, because you won't, and you'll be left with questions that only get louder the longer they go unanswered. This isn't just about Marcus anymore, this is about you, about everyone you know, about whether there's actually a way out or if we're all just choosing which cage to die in. Go watch it now. Your future self will thank you or curse you, depending on whether you're ready for what comes next.